Hey friends, this is Waylon Lewis of Elephant Journal, and we have yet another thought leader joining us on our Walk the Talk show series. I hope you're well. I hope you've had a great week. I know times can be tough these days. Today I have a very special guest, Andrea Rose, who I am delighted that she exists and that she cares about our world. She's an environmental leader here and servant, the highest leadership is service, here in Boulder, Colorado, around plant-based living. She'll unpack what that is. So this week, there was the, big news that folks like me who are paying attention, we know about, but that billions of human beings are going to have to mass migrate over the next century who live along, beaches with rising waters, areas of drought, areas of flooding. So the point of that is not to put us into this place of fear, but simply to remind us that we need to care. We need to care about each other. We need to care about our planet. We need to care about our daily actions, micro, and our, together, our macro actions. A lot of times, Republicans sort of exploit this fear of government. A lot of regulations in government are a pain in the butt. They have rules about what we can do in our backyard, whatever. But a lot of those rules are there for a reason, because we don't want people building, something that could burn down in their backyard. We don't want a skyscraper displacing a historic building. We want some density and affordable housing. Most of the regulations are created to protect our clean air, our clean water, our livable cities. And if they're not, we should vote for better people and support better people. So yeah, regulations can be helpful. So Andrea is one of, I think, the co-founders of Planet-Based Living Festival here in Boulder. Super inspiring lady. Yep.
Hello.
Yeah. Hey.
Thank you so much for inviting me on the show today.
Well,
I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh yeah, of course.
It means so much to me.
So I'm thrilled to host you. You're an amazing, inspiring person. Most of the time, I'm zero waste. I bike. I don't have a car. I hate plastic. I'm vegan, all this stuff. Most of the time, even my own dear friends regard me as a little bit weird, that I'm so, grumpy about some of the things in this world, and that I'm so inspired about such weird things. But then I run into you at Nude Foods Market, our local zero waste grocery, and you and I could rap for hours about this stuff. So tell me about yourself and Planet-Based Living Festival.
Sure. So I've been involved. I've been involved in this movement for the past 3 decades. I started out with becoming vegan about 33 years ago, before it was even popular.
So that was
and as I was vegan,
wow,
1989.
I feel like we need we need like a badge. Anyone who was vegan in the 80s, that's a short list, I feel like.
It's very short. And once I made the commitment to go vegan and started raising awareness. I know you speak about veganism all the time, so I'm not going to touch too much on it, other than
it, because we have all the time we want, and you can come back 80 different times. Honestly, okay. I feel like there's like 18 different subjects I want to talk about, and you probably have at least a few. But what the hell inspired you to go vegan in 1989? It's not like that was even a thing. Like, there were no vegan restaurants, no vegan products, really.
Right. Well, I was fortunate to be raised around the PETA office, and so it was in my area, and so PETA, I started going to the work parties people, and learning kind of
treatment of animals,
for the ethical treatment of animals. So they were local, and so this was before internet. This was before print media. I mean, we had print media, but you had to go to places to get it. And so I happened to see them in the mall and learn about them through their print media. And so I started going to work parties and meeting other people, like-minded people, employees of the organization. And so I decided, I read this brochure called Down Cow, or it was about a downed cow. And I learned just about how it's not just the killing of animals, but it's the torture of animals. So it seems like it went to the next level. And I heard the story and I read the story and it just touched my heart. And I was 13 years old. I came home and I was like, what do I do? And so I kind of started the journey.
Such an adorable
13.
Story.
Well, it gets better because I couldn't understand this was happening. I learned about the animal testing and just kind of all of PETA's campaigns. So then I tried to be vegetarian. First I stopped eating cows, and then I kind of tried to go vegan a few times, but they had like horrible products available, like rubber cheese replacements and things like that. So when I was about 18, I was having a conversation with a relative of mine who was actually a dairy farmer, or he raised cattle or cows. And I said, is it true about the veal? Because I just didn't want to accept that cows have to have babies in order to produce milk. And he said, yes, it is. And I said, I'm never eating it again. And that moment I made the commitment, and I knew that was the right thing to do. I was following my heart, following my conscience, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so that moment when I was 18 years old, I never touched dairy intentionally again, or eggs or any of those products.
And you became vegetarian in like 84 or something?
That was probably around 85-ish.
You're a Reagan era vegan.
So that started the journey. Right around there.
You know so much. I know so much about these things. I don't want to speed past this because your heart was touched by a downed cow. Can you explain what a downed cow is?
Sure. So in the dairy industry, it's very taxing on a cow's body to produce milk. So a typical dairy cow, when they get impregnated every year to produce the highest quality milk, they don't want the milk at the end of the cycle. They want that richest fat that a newborn baby needs. So they have to continually impregnate the female cow, artificially most of the time, by the way. So it's against her will. So they artificially inseminate the cows. Through this production of producing babies and producing milk, they're literally turning their bones into milk. They're putting all their energy, all their resources into producing this high quantity of milk.
For a baby that is taken away from them against their will on the first day, second day, third day. Again and again and again and again.
So
and the cows, like dogs and humans, have attachment. They have families. They have love. They have best friends. It's heartbreaking. They cry.
They cry for their babies. They chase the trucks. They're devastated. They still have the hormones, as any mother knows, that you have these bonding hormones, every species. Otherwise, they wouldn't survive. So you're so committed to your offspring, and yet they take them away. They don't know where they are. They don't know how to get to them. They smell them often in the farms, and they're wailing for them. So this is quite commonly been reported. There's plenty of videos online if you want to see it. But anyway, if people want to see it. But
and I think this is one of the 2 or 3 things that made me go from vegetarian to vegan was realizing that being vegetarian doesn't really matter. Being vegetarian, you're still directly causing the torture and murder of these cute baby cows, the moms eventually when they get retired or downed, and the chicks for eggs, and the moms and the mom chickens.
So
after their production.
So I'll just touch really quick on the downed cow. So once the cow produces several cycles of milk and babies, pregnancies, they start to get weakness. So they kind of have weakness in their hips and their muscles and their joints, and so laxity. So they kind of literally collapse and they can't get up. And I've been on farms. I'm a veterinary technician, a licensed veterinary technician, and part of my knowledge, part of the information I wanted to get was I went to farms, and I went to dairy farms, I went to meat farms, cattle farms, whatever, to see how the animals were treated. I went as a professional. I didn't go as a I went as a professional observer. And so they shock the cows to get them up. They use electric shocks to get them up because they know if a cow is down, you're down.
Just to be clear,
they're done.
They're using electric shocks on an exhausted mother cow who has been repeatedly, you could say raped, forcibly impregnated, and then had its baby stolen. And then you're getting to the more good stuff.
It was sickening to watch them continually shock them. The cows are tortured. Then they're either, sometimes they get up,
sometimes they can't.
Sometimes they don't. So the thing is, they do everything they can to escape that shock. And that once they're down, and cow is so big, everyone knows that their muscles break down very quickly. It causes renal failure, everything. So they're just too big to be laying down. A cow cannot, or a horse or any of those animals are not designed to be laying down for long periods of time. And so if they don't get up, they're done. And so that's basically what a down cow is, for either they can't get up or they won't get up or whatever the reason. A lot of it's, such low calcium that they can't function, their muscles can't fire, they can't function. And that's kind of a lot of the reason why they can't get up. And pure exhaustion as well, with other things going on. But so that's what a down cow is. And I read the story about a down cow that they used chains to get them up. So they put them in the back of a truck and they try to pull them with chains to force them to get up. So I don't mean to be graphic, but people need to realize that dairy is not an alternative to meat. It's actually worse than meat, in my opinion. It causes so much more suffering and torturing.
But they don't just use chains to pull them up. Sometimes they'll literally use, like, what do you call it? Like earth moving machinery to scoop them up with the sharp, the sharp scooper. I mean, they're just.
Or they use dump trucks like they're trash to scoop them up. And then either they put them in the dumpster or they put them in the truck to take them to slaughter, because they can slaughter them as long as they're still alive.
Is the beautiful part and the cheerful part. I'm Buddhist. You said that touched your heart. And the beautiful thing is when when we, any of us, open our eyes and we just dare to look at what we're causing. We're good people beneath all the habits and the weird information and the ignorance. And we can change, and we can eat yummy vegan food. I just had an amazing vegan lunch. None of this is like, what do you call it? Like, I'm not depriving myself. And I'm 200 pounds. I bike every day. I climb. I'm healthy. I'm active.
I know.
So the good news is we can actually create a world of harmony where mothers are protected and the babies can hang out with the moms, and it can be like kumbaya. We can all stand around in a circle and have a good old time, and that's beautiful to me. Can I just touch on something you said earlier? So you were talking about the water crisis and the water insecurity, but a lot of people don't realize that California is one of the main producers of dairy in this country. And I don't know if people are noticing that the Colorado River is being sucked dry. And a lot of that water is going to California, who has grandfather rights to have access to the water. It's being used to irrigate their fields for pasture and for alfalfa. And that's being used to feed dairy cows. It's also being used to export for China's dairy cows and the Middle East camels. So we are sucking our Colorado River dry for this dairy that I understand that people have positive memories and they look back and they feel that they're going to give something up, but you're actually gaining so much. And there's so many alternatives to dairy now. So many alternatives that are delicious, and you can make your favorite recipes. You can make yogurts. You can make all sorts of ice creams with all sorts of plant-based ingredients. That's the beauty of it. You can still enjoy these things without the cruelty and without the environmental impact. It won't be tough for you, but it's a tough question. So, remember, you can come back as many times as you want. Literally, I promise. Because I know we're kind of just organically, no pun intended, going through this conversation. So, well, first of all, a little caveat. The Colorado River isn't just in Colorado. It's in like 10 states. Thank you. Seven states and down to Mexico. Something like 12 million years. I saw a documentary half produced by Patagonia like 10 years ago about this stuff. It is not getting better. It's getting worse. It's not just, golf courses and lawns in Arizona and Nevada that are sucking it dry. It's, as you said, animal torture and killing agriculture that is sucking it dry, and generally and overwhelmingly vegan alternatives like oat milk or whatever use a fraction of that water. But the question I want to ask you is, I've been interviewing tons of vegans. It's been super fun. I get to do whatever I want. Isn't that great? I can bring on amazing people. Most of these vegans, however, are incredibly passionate, incredibly inspired, incredibly critical of non-vegan society and consumerism. But I think there's a huge blind spot in the vegan community, which I belong to. I'm also an environmentalist, as you are. And the blind spot to me is plastic, is vinyl, is all this stuff. So vegans are always like, wool is evil, which, you know, the more you look into wool, the worse it looks. But plastic coats, plastic filling, plastic filled pillows. This is filled with buckwheat. You know, plastic is directly killing hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of animals. And indirectly, it comes from petroleum and climate causing.
Like 99%
and is causing climate crisis, which is directly related to the extinction of billions of animals. So you and I were having this great conversation at Nude Foods, which is zero waste, or at least close to zero waste. So how do you, I mean, obviously there's options like organic cotton or whatever, you know, I have a wax canvas jacket instead of a plastic jacket, but how do you feel about the sort of blind spot about vegans? We don't think about climate crisis typically.
This is what I've been trying to figure out for the last couple decades. So once I started when I became vegan, I started going to conferences and festivals and events. And I would see I'd see all these t-shirts for sale, which are made from like non-organic cotton. The fast fashion industry is one of the biggest polluters of our planet with all the toxic chemicals plus all the waste
and most
in the textile
of those
industry.
T-shirts are
and I would see
even now plastic blend or all plastic.
Or polyester blend, even worse. And so I would be at these events, and then most of them had food available, and it was always packaged in plastic. So they would have carry-out containers. People were happily walking around with their smoothies with straws or their containers. Now, I'd be like, where's the recycling? And so a lot of these events, 20, 25 years ago or so, they didn't have recycling bins. I'm like, why aren't we recycling? Why are people producing all this waste fest, and there's no recycling? And I started to come up with the ideas for plant-based living. So plant-based living was designed after years and years of trying to talk to people and have people were not interested or didn't think it was a problem.
This is your festival that you co-created, I think. And you're saying planet-based living, not just plant. I love it.
Yes, it's planet-based. So it's based on putting the planet first. So it's things that you can do in your daily life where you put the planet first. And so it's about living kinder on the planet. So one of those things is plastics, which is huge, because I say it's one thing to save cows and pigs and chickens as a vegan. Well, that's great. But I didn't feel that was enough, because wildlife is suffering. We're taking their land away. We're clear cutting forests. We are polluting the oceans. We're polluting beaches. We're putting toxins in the air. We're having these lawns where no animal can live because of that. They mow them down several times a week. They put chemicals on them. So there's no food for pollinators. There's no food for insects. Birds cannot live because they need the insects. And so there's like annihilation of all these nature all around us. And so plastic has something to do with it.
Renee's in the comments. I don't know if you can see, but she's saying, Renee is, she was on the video series Walk the Talk show recently. She's an eco-fashion kind of expert, a fashion insider. And she's saying only 9% of most of plastic is ever recycled. We're ingesting it. We're literally getting it in our bloodstream and eating it now.
The amount of a credit card every week, the average person eats the amount of a credit card. And I don't know if they realize that plastic contains, it just affects as an endocrine disruptor, whatever is in plastic actually affects our hormones and affects our health. So we're eating this, it gets stored in the fat, and it actually is becoming quite a problem. in our society. So it's in our water, it's in our food. And so who would buy packaged food that is in plastic already and then heat it up in plastic and it gets in the food even more? And then the whole process. There's a place called Cancer Alley that's in Louisiana. Have you heard of it? It's like 85 miles from like around the Baton Rouge area. And that's where they produce a lot of these refineries to make plastics and to make oil refineries. And it's called Cancer Alley because of the high levels of cancer of the people that live there. And this is like poor communities that cannot move, that can get up and move somewhere. So they have to deal with it. So it's really a horrible situation for the people that are stuck living in these communities to make plastics and to make plastics which are harmful to our health, harmful to the planet. And then think about all the animals that eat the plastic: whales, seabirds, fish. They're all eating our plastic. Bears, polar bears, they're raiding all the landfills because they're getting desperate for food, so they're coming inland and raiding the landfills.
And whale that was almost like a down cow. It was a collapsed whale on a beach, and it died. It beached itself, and they opened it up, and it was so full of plastic trash that it was full, but it starved to death.
Was this last week in Hawaii?
They've been beaching themselves a lot lately. But this
they
one that
pop up all the time.
You know how these moments
but they had
really
one
stick with you. This was probably a year ago. This photo of this, or a couple of years ago, is happening continually. I mean, it happens to bears locally here in Boulder when they get shot, which is often because we leave our trash out and we shoot bears here. If they get busted in the trash twice, they open up their tummy and they're full of plastic. So they're starving, but they're full.
Right, they get blockages and so they feel like they're full, but they're actually starving to death. And so bears, I mean, I think some of the top items that they eat are diapers, oddly enough. So, but they do raid the trash because people put them out and they don't use bear-proof trash and they live in bear areas. It's a whole complicated issue. But the bottom line is, I tell people to deal with the bear issue is to compost your food waste. So if you're not putting food in the trash, there's less likely for animals to seek it out. They get their heads stuck in jars. I say rinse out your recyclables or things you put in the trash in the landfill, because animals will go after it. They get stuck. They eat the bags with food residue. They eat the containers with food residue. They just chew on it. And so the bears are not exempt.
So let's
this,
just, I just need a little rhythm of not getting too depressed. So when you have Planet-Based Living Festival, how do you, because I go to all these vegan food festivals with food trucks that are run on generators that are polluting so badly it's disgusting, and then you get everything's in plastic basically. Some people try to do compostable, but how does it work when we go to your festival? What does it look like? What's the alternative?
Okay, well, the Planet-Based Living Festival is very unique. So it's based on plant-based living, which is my nonprofit, Living with Harmony. That I designed that with John Pierre after years of decades of doing the research and trying to see the issues that need to be dealt with. So the Living with Harmony design coined the term planet-based living, or putting the planet first. Based on that, we try to reach people through festivals, through farmers markets and events. And I've seen you at the farmers market many times with your bike.
Love it.
So, I came up with my co-organizer, Bleeding Hearts. We came up with the Planet-Based Living Festival, where it's a plastic-free event. So it's single-use plastic-free event. You will not see water bottles at our event. You will not see juice bottles at our event that are made from plastic, or the carry-out containers. Everyone has to have compostable containers or reusable. And so we really put an effort in. This will be our third year this year. And it's a really unique festival because there's no palm oil either, which is another environmental disaster. And so a lot of people don't, when they look at it, they don't realize that a lot of these things are just being served and people don't think anything of it. So we really encourage people. We try to train, show vendors the alternatives for not serving plastic. So we try to show them about compostable. Now, the key about compostable, Waylon, is if it goes in the landfill, it produces methane like everything else. It has to go in commercial compost. It's not a miracle item.
Yeah,
it's a single use item.
We were insulting, it's nuanced, but we were insulting the industrial compost stuff. But there's two categories of compost, as you well know. You and I could talk forever about this stuff, but it's actually simple. There's backyard compostable, like you were saying with the bears. You can put your foodstuffs and your hay and your leaves and whatever in a big pile. Backyard compostable to me is the only thing that matters. Compostable, the industrial stuff, just as bad, creates methane, which is causing climate change times 1,000, unless it's industrially composted, which almost never happens. As you know, here in Boulder, we just got rid of commercial compost because no one's sorting compost in plastic. So, you know, it's depressing. But
right.
What isn't depressing is what you're doing. And biking down to, I can tell you, biking down to your festival or the farmer's market, and I bring my own mug. You know, I usually bring the tin ones, and it's so easy and it's so fun, and there's community. And, you know, some of this stuff can seem intimidating, but we don't have to be perfect, right? We just have to care and try and learn.
Well, there's a saying, we don't need millions of people doing zero waste perfectly. We just need them doing it. We need them doing it imperfectly. Well, we don't need a few people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. And that means, first of all, education. Educate. Once you know more, you can do more. So one of my take-home points is we can really all do better with our sorting of our waste. So when we try to recycle things, we put an effort in, even though less than 9% of plastic gets recycled, even less gets recycled if it's contaminated. So people will quite commonly go, where does it go? And they'll put at events, they'll put recycling with compostables, they'll put compostables in the landfill. They don't want to put it in compostable. I don't know if the education's not there, but we're trying to reach people. Yeah. It has to go in the compost. That's why it's there. If it goes in the landfill, it turns to methane, and it's not designed to break down. And so in all these other states and all these, and other than places that have commercial compost available, people are used to just throwing it in the landfill thinking it's a better option, but that is quite questionable once you know what it doesn't break down as it's supposed to. And
I guess I have a question for like the viewers. Like, I find this stuff super inspiring because, you know, you connect it with, as you said, like Cancer Rally is not something we want. Like, I want people to get excited about this stuff. Like, we can have like our shop at Elephant, like, give us some hearts or comments. You know, we're seeing some great comments in here. Like, this stuff is sexy. Nothing sexier to me than figuring out composting or figuring out how not to poison our children or how not to create climate change and destroy this miraculously beautiful planet, which we're doing. Why is this not sexier? Like, let's get into this.
Yeah, it is. I would love to hear from people too. Like, where is the disconnect? So that inspires me. Like, part of Living with Harmony, my nonprofit organization, we're here in Boulder, we actually go to events and volunteer to do the waste diversion, or landfill diversion, we call it. It's so important to me, if there's an event, you're having fun, not to be causing harm. So we volunteer our time and try to sort things properly. And that way, we're going to be at the Environmental Film Festival, Colorado Environmental Film Festival next weekend. And we're going to volunteer our time to do that and also have a table. But that's where it's at. Like, we want to make sure that these items don't end up in the wrong place.
So I have such a, you know, caring about the planet crush on you. I'm so into this. How do you, you know, not get discouraged? Because you've been doing this stuff since, you know, you're a Reagan era vegan. Like, how do you, because I am, you know, Elephant's been around for 20 years. We reach millions of people writing about palm oil, writing about composting, but we've been doing this forever. And I don't feel like it's getting better. If anything, I feel like it's getting worse. And I don't need happy affirmation thoughts like, oh, you know, in the 90s, I grew up in the Buddhist community in Boulder. I've been hearing that the world planetary paradigm is shifting. I've been hearing that BS for like 40 years now. I want to see some real change. And we are seeing real change, the biggest climate bill in history because we all bothered to vote. But, you know, how do you not, like, what's the plan going forward? Because it feels like we're on the losing football team. We have no chance right now.
Well, this is a hard sell. I mean, people are busy. They have a million things pulling their energy into different directions. And I say there's a lot of things we can't control. Like I hear so many times, I can't bike. I'm either have this disability or this injury, or it's too cold out, or I live in an area where there's no bike lanes, whatever. Well, fine, you can't bike. I understand, but what else can you do? So I just want to tell people to divert that energy to what you can do to reduce your impact and reduce your energy use. Can you use a line? Can you line dry your clothes instead of using a dryer? Can you save energy there? That uses a lot of energy.
So that's like one thing we could do. What's another thing we
that's
can
one
do?
thing, right?
I love like little specific takeaways. So we can line dry it. When I do my wash, my whole house for a couple hours in the winter is full of clothes hanging from chairs and on top of the heaters, the vents, and but normally I do it outside, on a warm day. Yeah.
It dries in a second in Colorado, like in a few hours. It's like a day.
I think when we take specific mindful caring actions, we give ourselves hope. And like you said, we don't need a couple people doing it perfectly. We need billions, everyone doing it imperfectly. So if we all start doing what we can do, it's joyful, it's fun, and we start having that community feeling of like, okay, we're far from perfect. We have some serious obstacles, but we're making some real progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something else that everyone can do. So something that a lot of people tend to do is I say, bring your water bottle wherever you go. There's no excuse to be using single-use Solo cups and Dixie cups, and you go out to a restaurant, you go to a festival, and you just take these cups if you're thirsty. I say, get in the habit of bringing your own water bottle wherever you go. I'm sure that, a lot of people don't forget their cell phones.
Right.
So if we put the same value for not contributing more waste into remembering to bring our water bottle, then that will be cutting down on so much waste, because these Solo cups are not recyclable. They're not even pretend recyclable. They go right in the landfill, and they're made from petroleum. So it's another useless use of petroleum. And I just want to remind people to always be prepared. Be prepared for the planet, I say. So bring your own water bottle.
Don't realize that, because I didn't realize it forever. I mean, I guess I sort of technically did in the back of my mind, but a plastic Solo cup, plastic is petroleum. Petroleum is climate change on the back end, and kind of cancer on the back end, as we've discussed. Like, and again, if we're getting depressed at any time, you can always look at the alternative, bringing your own mug, having a nice time with the community. Yeah.
That's empowering.
It's empowering, and it's
That's
fun.
empowering.
Like, it's actually fun. I just wrote a whole book that was plastic free, by the way. It even has algae ink, and the cover. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to.
And the whole book is about like specific
awesome.
little like things you can do. Also like spiritual stuff you can do, but like environmental, vegan, spiritual, meditation, yada yada. And it's all fun, I guess is my point. Obviously it's not fun to feel that heartbreak or that intimidation or sadness or empathy when you're looking at the problems. You're like, oh my God.
Right.
But when the alternative world where it's about healing and, a true cycle of responsibility, it's fun. I think we don't talk about that enough.
Well, I like to say we're either part of the problem or part of the solution. So let's try to be part of the solution instead of just focusing on the problem and then just giving up and just saying it's overwhelming, I can't do anything about it. Something else that people can do, or stay on the plastic topic here, is they can absolutely refuse carry-out containers. Now, food waste in this country is like 40%. We waste the most food of anybody in the world, and that contributes like 20% of landfill waste, which produces methane. So I try to encourage people, if they go out to eat or go places where they know there's going to be food, to bring your own container. So I have one here, an example of just a simple container to always have in your bag. Refuse to take the plastic containers, or sometimes even styrofoam. They store out there. And so these will be out in the environment, wreaking havoc, breaking down into little microplastic pieces that become nanoplastics, and then they become go into your body, that go into the oceans, that animals eat them, that goes into their bodies.
Casual, Solo cup for our glass of water at a cafe, like say 10 years ago, we went to a cafe, we had a cup of water in plastic. How long is that plastic cup going to stick around?
Well, it does stick around for indefinitely. It could be hundreds of years. The thing is, with photo degradation, if it's out in the open, it can break down to smaller pieces because the sun breaks things down.
But
They
not
crack, they get
in
brittle,
plastic.
and that's when
We think of
they
plastic,
degrade.
like sometimes
Right.
companies use the term biodegradable. I'm always like, we don't actually want plastic to degrade. We don't want it in the first place.
Exactly. We don't want it in the first place, and it just is
Yeah.
full of disruptors in there that actually I don't know the name, I'm sorry at the moment, but it does have components in it that causes
You could make up
disruption
a term
in
like
our bodies.
xenotrifligate.
So
we'd all believe you. Yeah.
so it's ZENO. So the plastics, we don't want them out there. If they go to the landfill, there's people think they break down eventually, but it's the same thing where animals go in the landfills. There's so much waste in there, it becomes anaerobic. So like food things that people put in the landfill and think, oh, it's fine, it will break down. It rots in there. So it doesn't have the right conditions to break down properly, like it would if it's, say, on the floor where it's exposed to sun and rain and so forth.
And in the ocean,
it's trapped in there.
Pieces of plastic look exactly like the food that fish love. So they're eating it, and that's not good for the fish. Then they're full of plastic.
Yeah. So it becomes in the fish's bodies, and then it becomes in all the animals that eat the fish, the birds and the whales and the dolphins, etc.
The Garden of Eden, and it was like all just you were outside for some reason. Tell us about this.
No, I'm actually inside. I actually try to grow my own food as much as I can because that's it reduces the packaging, it reduces the gas, because that's another way I cut it on gas.
Tell everyone what the heck this is.
So this is called a lettuce grow, okay? And so this has UV lights that are on, and I'm actually growing this without peat moss. So this is actually, I use little pebbles in here. I grow the seeds. I start the seeds myself, and then I have collard greens here. I have peppers, which I'm yet to try because they have flowers. I'm hoping that they will turn to peppers. I have Thai basil here. I don't know if you can see the Thai basil, but I have pansies down here. So I have edible flowers, which I use for my tortoises that eat flowers. So I grow things inside. I actually have 2 of these units. And this way I can cut down on shipping from produce. I can eat in the middle of winter, not dependent on produce being shipped from California or other places in the middle of winter, and still have fresh. It's so fresh. It's so delicious.
Super inefficient. How do you feel about that?
Well, it does use electricity. So you have to outweigh, like part of this is making decisions. So the decisions of all the trucks coming with refrigeration and shipping from California or Mexico or somewhere else in the wintertime versus the electricity I'm using to run this. It also has a pump. So the water goes through here and it just circulates nutrients to the roots of these. Now, this is made from reclaimed plastic from Haiti. So that's the beauty of this lettuce grow. So they took plastic from Haiti. So part of this recycling of plastic is there's no market for recycled products. That's why it's cheaper to make plastic from raw materials than it is from petroleum than it is to make it from existing plastic. So this is made from recycled plastic and it's reclaimed plastic from Haiti.
One question from Pretty Sharp Pencil here on Instagram. How do you trust the hydroponic liquid to be free from harmful toxics or toxins?
Well, the minerals in it are, there's plastic in everything, even salt. Salt is one of the main sources of plastic and microplastics. I don't know if people realize that.
I have salt in here that I
ocean salt. So it's even contaminated our salt. So this is made from minerals.
Do you see that? Delicious herb salt.
Dill.
This is from Dharma's
herb salt
from Dharma's garden.
Is that salt free then?
No, this is salt.
Oh, okay.
It's just with herbs in it.
Okay. Yeah. So It's made from minerals, so I'm assuming if they have minerals, they're in the ground. So I'm certainly at this point in time that there is probably some certain contamination of everything. I don't know. I don't know if the company does studies to know if their potassium or their whatever goes into their mineral mixes are contaminated with chemicals, but they're not. It can't be called organic because it's not made from whatever would make it organic, which is basically contains carbon.
But to your point, like when we go bike or whatever past organic farm here in Boulder, that's like local organic produce that's coming out of the beautiful earth. But people are literally driving by with lead coming out of their gas pipes. You have to come back on camera. You know, every farm, even the organic farm, is using these huge plastic sheets to keep the weeds down. So, you know, again.
That's it. So you have to, I'm sure it goes into the soil. I even read an article that they're considering.
Come through it. So they're cutting it up. You know, it's falling apart. It's in the sun.
Yeah, it breaks down, it biodegrades, it all goes in the landfill. I did an internship in an organic farm, and they use those plastic covers, and it's a weed barrier, and it also helps keep the soil warmer. But at the end of the season, guess what? It gets ripped up because the holes aren't going to be the same, and then you can't just really get it up because it has all these pegs in it. So it's a lot of plastic waste. And there was even an article that organic might if something was grown with plastic, they're considering it, making it not, that they can't use the organic label. So that's being discussed. Our best
organic farms
because it is
about this, hopefully constructively, for many years with Farmers Market, are some of the biggest fans of, you know, single-use plastic bags, you know, for decades here in Boulder. We have another great follow-up question from Pretty Sharp Pencil, who is a Pretty Sharp Pencil. They know their stuff. So they're saying, in terms of this lettuce grow behind here, not petrochemical fertilizer, that's the usual. So what kind of fertilizer are you using?
Well, the company is using minerals. So it's not organically based. So I would have to call the company to see exactly where the minerals are taken from. But this is not like a traditional, a lot of them contain animal products as well, like fish products and so forth. So I would have to check with the company, but again, it's not organic. Yeah. So it's something that is not going to be derived from that. It's certainly like a pretty exciting, cool thing. For me, I have all my lights off at night. So if I had this going, it would be like my big night light too. So it would show me where I'm going. But I'm not walking into the walls. There's another follow-up question, actually a correction on me, which I'd love to debate, but I'm probably wrong on this, that there's no lead in exhaust anymore. Actually, it was taken out long ago. In any case, you know, when I see these huge trucks and, you know, all that going by the organic fields, you know, you don't want to be putting your mouth on the exhaust pipe, certainly, and the proximity always concerns me. I do know, Pretty Sharp Pencil, that there's been studies that for people like me, cyclists along the road, breathing the exhaust, that is really unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So good correction, and I always like to correct my own misinformation. Yeah, particularly diesel fuel, which is most of the trucks that use in this country. They use diesel fuel for the trucks that transport items, and they use diesel fuel in a lot of pickup trucks. So that produces more toxic chemicals than regular gasoline. They always say that gas burns cleaner, but diesel does have some cancer-causing components in it, the diesel. So that's just keep that in mind. That they use a lot of diesel trucks and tractors. They use it gas in tractors, and they use it in trucks,
and the final tip is on this lettuce grow. Is that what it's called behind you? My friend.
Yes. That's why I'm standing aside so you can see it better, because when I step away,
it's like straight out of Star Trek, I feel like. Is my friend Elise got one, and they're not super cheap, but you know, they're totally worth it because you're creating so much like produce continually. But you can find them almost all the time on Marketplace or Craigslist used.
Sure. Because there is work involved. Everything that you do for the planet requires a little bit more effort, but it's worth it in the end because you're doing something positive for the planet. So this requires, you know, every 3 months you have to change the plants out. You have to scrub it down because plants have diseases and you don't want to go the next batch. So you do need maintenance. It does need to be taken apart and hosed down and scrubbed down.
Do that for
I will
our
say
cars.
that.
We're hosing down our
So,
cars. We're, you know, I mean, maybe we're not neat freaks, but you know, everything in our life that we care about takes some maintenance. You know, I have a hot tub out here full of microplastics that I'm soaking in, and you know, that you have to clean that, and there's eco things you can do, but you know, everything takes work, like relationship, everything on earth takes work. But I do think that is why there's always used ones available. People are like, I'm gonna have unlimited free lettuce, and then it's like a little bit of work.
Yeah. So if people aren't into this type of thing, I also take advantage of community gardens here in Boulder. So you can go garden outside. If this doesn't work for you, or you're worried about whatever the nutrients are, you can garden outside, and that takes a little bit more effort too, because you have to go out there and make sure it's either irrigated or watered, mulched, and you need to maintain it.
Ignorant, you can bike, walk, bus, carpool, whatever, to farmers market, buy a bunch of stuff in your own bags that you brought with you, you know, bring your own mug for the coffee, talk with people, you know, and leave.
You know how to do it. You know how to do it. That's exactly it. So, or join CSAs, which you're paying the farmer. So every week you get like a box of produce, whatever grew that week. So there's plenty of, it's called, you know, community supported agriculture. So people can do that if they don't want to go to the farmer's market. They're too busy. Then they can just pick up the box once a week at usually a pickup point. And that way it makes it convenient for everybody. And you're supporting local farmers rather than farmers in other countries and other places. You don't know what their practices are, and you don't know how they treat their employees. And there's just a whole array of problems.
I should bring up another cool subject because it's always in my mind when I start talking about Boulder Farmers Market, is affordability. So you can buy bulk food. My mom was super poor growing up. She bought big bulk bags of rice or whatever and popcorn, and, you know, like, what are some affordability tips for just,
a farmers market?
Eco living, mindful living.
Yeah. Mindful living. Well, a lot of people think it's more expensive. I try to focus on locally grown, in season. So that cuts down the carbon footprint a great deal. If you're eating apples and pears versus tropical fruit imported from somewhere else, the tropical fruit also breaks down very quickly. So it's fragile. So they pack it in styrofoam sometimes. Some of these fruits that come in individually wrapped in their own styrofoam little net. So I just try to eat local, try to support local. And then, you know, the CSA is a great way to get the produce.
You get so much stuff. You get like too much.
Yeah, because it. But then it encourages you to cook more, which is really good for the planet, to prepare your own food instead of depending on packaged foods, which have plastic. They're contaminated from the plastic, and also there's more waste. So I say, you know, maybe people can grow their own herbs in a windowsill, cut down on that, because all the herbs come in plastic containers, or at least most of the ones that I see. Yeah. They could start with that, start small, and then support local farms. And then even there's been some imperfect produce companies. Now, I don't necessarily recommend imperfect produce because they ship from like another state usually. So it's not like it's imperfect from King Soopers. It's actually coming from somewhere else. And but like Nude Foods here in town in Boulder, for all the people in Boulder and surrounding areas, they're starting to carry imperfect produce now. So if you don't mind a dented,
they're not even dented,
apple,
they call it ugly or imperfect fruit or veggies. Sometimes they're sometimes
or overstock.
90% of the time it's an apple that's like, you know, weird apple instead of like a, you know, they in grocery stores they just want like emoji apples.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like people want this perfection.
They're just
like
pushing
an
it
untarnished apple.
Like when I go to farmers market and you see first fruits, you know, they're apples. None of them are like perfect, but they're stunningly beautiful. They're delicious. They're super fresh. And if you buy a whole bunch of them, even seconds, they're really cheap.
They do have the seconds, and same thing with the peaches, and same thing with the cherries. So the Boulder Farmers Market, I'm sure other farmers markets as well, and those might be little blemishes, or they're just not absolute what they
what
want
a bigger
for the
blemish
perfection, for the
is
perfect look.
the perfect apples. I love apples. Perfect apples at the grocery store. They have wax all over them for some reason. They have no taste, and they were grown with poison.
Right.
Those to me are more important blemishes than like a little, little blemish.
Right. The taste is phenomenal. The food that's grown fresh and not shipped from far away, and they try to grow bigger apples at the expense of the flavor, just the way that they get different varieties that they crossbreed and so forth. So it definitely is a taste, more nutrients, more taste if you get items that are grown locally. They look different, right? Like tomatoes are made to travel long distances, and so they're the ones that you find in the store are typically thicker skinned and that sort of thing. If you get things in the farmer's market, lettuces are generally thinner, and kale, because it's grown locally, it doesn't need to be able to ship and sit for weeks. So it's generally is a lighter variety that they use.
Font of information. You skip over like these incredibly important things. Oh, you don't skip them over. You're great. But you said they're more nutritious. So just as they're more yummy and fresh and eco and better for the planet, they're actually, is that true? Because I know they've done studies on this. They're, a local apple that tastes better is going to be more nutritious than a boring apple that's been shipped for 5 days.
Well, part of that has to do with the sprays they use on the apple. So when an apple is under stress, they produce more nutrients to protect itself, more antioxidants, or different plants do anyway. But when they're depending on sprays, and it's keeping insects away from apples, yes, but it's also creating so many more problems. The soils are so depleted of nutrients. They're dependent on fertilizers, because they're stripped everything of the nutrients because it's massive intensive farming. So that also affects the flavor of things, having a poor soil. So it's just a different taste. To me, the food is incredible when you eat it from a local farm or you grow it yourself. There's just no comparison, especially in season. If you try to get a tomato in the middle of February, it tastes like a cucumber that's like red. I mean, it's like pink dye in it. It's hard. It's just not the same as a summer, fresh picked, yummy tomato off the vine in July.
You kind of just said this, but I think your friend here, Crystallosophy, said insects biting a plant makes it create more antioxidants.
Yeah. So they protect themselves, so they release antioxidants. But the apples are the same, the poor soils, and so that gets into a whole nother part of plant-based living. We encourage people to replace their lawns with native plants that support our pollinators, that support our insects, that support our birds, and support wildlife, and support the soils. So that part of that is having the natural organic materials in the soils and natural mulches to keep feeding our soils instead of depleting them with massive petroleum-based chemicals. Okay, so pesticides and herbicides, and all that's petroleum-based as well. That a lot of those chemicals are.
To ask, I always have like my dad on one shoulder. My dad's, voted for Trump and all that. So, but he's a great guy, and he didn't vote for Trump twice, which I think is, progress. But why do we care about insects? Why do we care about birds? Why do we care about soil health? Who cares about all this stuff? Why do we care?
Because ultimately that affects us. So if you don't have food security, then that's going to be a big problem, especially when the population is not slowing down anytime soon. We're at 8 billion people. These people all need to be fed. We need to make sure that our soils are healthy, our air is healthy, and we have places that our air is healthy. So part of that is maintaining a natural environment through having native plants. Those require less water. We talked about water earlier. Water is crucial, especially in the West. You cannot have thirsty plants. They're just ornamental plants that don't feed birds. They don't feed insects. Typically they're water hungry too. So if you want to have a less maintenance yard that requires less maintenance, it's actually selfish, because you say less work for me and less water and less having plants that are designed for this area, and having less of a lawn to worry about mowing it on your weekends and making sure that the neighbors aren't complaining about the dandelions and all this stuff, which feed the bees and feed the pollinators. A healthy lawn actually has
You know what
dandelions
cracks
in it.
me up
So
is,
the reason why
dandelions is, so like 10 years ago, a friend of mine, Amy Apoliti, I don't know if you know her, she's a local kind of famous yoga teacher. She just like literally right before we talked, she texted me, it's like 10-year-old video of me running around Boulder with Brigitte Mars. Do you know her? And Brigitte's like, you can eat this nettle, you can eat these dandelions, you can do this, you can do that, you can use this for that, you know, medicinal. And like literally yuppies are driving our Lexuses down to farmers market buying dandelion greens, and then the same in your house, in your backyard, you're using Monsanto Roundup to poison dandelions. And meanwhile, dandelions are like delicious, especially if you pick them when they're fresh and young. And you know, the flowers feed the bees, as you were saying, and the other insects and the birds and, you know, all this. So